Happy week 2 of ISTEP review, 8th graders. Now, after yesterday, you were probably wondering where the ISTEP video was. See what I did there? Don't judge. So, here's your video on how to do this week's ISTEP problem. So we're going to read through it. We're going to talk about conceptually what our idea is. And since it is the season of giving, I'm going to show you 2 ways to go about solving it, okay? So, both ways will be correct, but in case you chose one way or the other, we get to show you both methods today. Here we go. A farmer needs to repair and build some fences. She has a roll of fencing that is 100 yards long. First, she builds 5 identical fences for her vegetable gardens. Next, she uses 10 feet, you see what they did? Changed units of the roll to repair a fence. Lastly, it says after she completes this, so after all this is done, she has 40% of the original roll of fencing left. Okay, so that's a lot of information we're going to unpack here in a second, but what are they actually asking? What is the length? Oh, in yards, yards of fencing used for each vegetable garden. Okay, so we want to know the vegetable garden. That's what they desire, so that's going to be our unknown. But before we get into that, let's really talk about all the information they gave us and how we can set that up in our minds, all right? So, farmer needs to repair and build some fences. She has a roll of fencing that's 100 yards long. So that's what we start with. That's our original, okay? So I'm not even gonna do math yet. I'm just gonna talk concepts. I start with my original amount. Come on, pen. There it is. I'm just gonna write down what I get. I have an original roll, and what does she do next? She builds 5 identical fences for her gardens. So she's using what I have, and she's building 5 identical fences, which means we're using that fence, so it's taking away from the original. We're going to subtract 5 fences. And again, we're not going to solve yet, we're just getting our thoughts down. We take 5 fences worth of roll away from the original, okay? So I got the original, I dealt with the 5 fences. Next, she uses 10 feet of the roll. So if she uses it, she's taking it away from the original. We're now removing 10 feet. Okay? Check. After she completes the work, she has 40% of the original. So after we're done, now we're completed, which means we're finished, which means it equals something. We're left with 40% of our original. Okay? So those are my thoughts going on right now. Let's start talking strategy. We want to know the fencing and we don't know it. Okay? So chances are that is going to become my x. Right? That's my variable. When we're trying to solve something we don't know it, that is our variable. Now, here's our 2 options. Okay? Here's our 2 options. They mention yards and they mention feet. You could use yards to solve or you could use feet to solve. It doesn't matter. The important thing is at the very end, your final answer be in yards. So over here, I'm going to show how I would set up using yards. And over here, I'm going to show how I would set up using feet. We're going to use this equation to solve. Everybody should know, what's my original? The original is 100 yards. So what I'm allowed to do is just write, so I was going to be doing green. 100. Okay? You guys see that okay? That's coming through. Minus, I'm going back to the original, 5x. Okay? Now here's where we got to be careful. Minus, I'm not going to write 10 because it's 10 feet. Well, if it's 10 feet, how do you find out the number of yards? Because remember, when you're working in an equation, you need to be talking about the same units. How many yards in a foot? Or I'm sorry, how many feet in a yard would be a better question. There are 3 feet in 1 yard. Oh, come on, pen. It works. So, easy math, take 10 and divide it by 3. Now you can use 10/3 or you can use 3.3. Everybody doing okay? Now again, I'm going decimal, but again, you feel free to use mixed number or improper fraction. Now, this is actually pretty easy. This is pretty nice. 40% of the original. This is one of those few times we get a nice number from ISTEP. What's our original? 100. What's 40% of 100? 40. Now, if you didn't know that, most students at least know that 40% can be represented by 0.4. Ooh, technology, you are not my friend today. There we go. All right. So I would have just taken 0.4 times 100. Now, we have a nice equation that we can solve. I'm going to combine like terms. I get negative 5x plus 96.6 equals 40. I subtract the 96.6 from both sides. Do not lose your negative. It's still a negative 5x equals negative 56.6. Divide both sides by negative 5. We get x is 11.3. And what does x represent? Always make sure you know what your variable is representing. X was next to the 5, which means it's how long each fence is, and that's exactly what they wanted to know. It is 11.3 yards. And we know that to be true because remember, this is our equation when you're using yards. Went a little quick. I think the setup I took time, and then once we went to solve, I went a little faster. I think you're doing really well when it comes to solving the actual equations. The setup is sometimes the most difficult part. So what if you're looking at this going, no, I don't like decimals. I don't play around with decimals. I don't want it. Okay, you probably used feet. So let's talk about how we would do this. If the original is 100 yards, how many feet is that? Well, using this conversion, hopefully you come up with 300. Okay, 100 yards, 300 feet. Minus, we're still 5 fences. Still 5 fences. And hey, we're dealing with feet, we don't have to change that 10. Many students prefer this one because it doesn't involve the decimals right away. But with 40% of your original, I would have to take 0.4 times 300. And you'll get 120. So that would have been your equation if you kept it in feet. Now keep in mind, when you finish this equation, you're not done because your answer is in feet. So when we finish this, what are we going to have to do to get an answer in yards? Divide by 3. Okay, so let's solve this the same way we did the other one. Combine like terms. We get a negative 5x plus 290 equals 120. Catch up. Yes, all right. Now, we're isolating the variable. To undo positive 290, we subtract 290. We get negative 5x equals negative 170. Undo multiplying by negative 5, we divide by negative 5. And we get x equals 34. Now, so many people get here like, woo, I'm smart, I did it well. You did, but you're wrong. You're wrong. You did all these correct steps to get a wrong answer. This would not get full credit because it doesn't answer what they asked. This is in feet. So to get it in yards, you would have to take 34 divided by 3, and you would get 11.3, same final answer. Reminder, showing work is so important here. So I've seen some students in the past, they put 34 and then they put 11.3. You might miss a point there because the ISTEP grades your work. If they don't see you coming to a conclusion and you just write it at the end, if they don't see how you got there, they're going to take a point away. So make sure you don't skip that step if you used feet to get there, okay? Quick rundown on how to identify what they're asking, break it down into thought before going into your equation, and then you had options. Both had the same exact outcome, okay? One more week. We're doing this next week before Christmas break, and then we'll have that last week for finals and getting ready for all the finishing up projects. One more week. You can do it. Proud of you. Have a great weekend. Keep learning.